So as you know, this MacBook's a pretty big deal. New chip, new design, new everything. So I dressed up for the occasion. I suited up.
Suit up!
So it's very similar to like every other MacBook Pro within recent years in terms of the box and the unboxing experience. You're getting a tab on the outside to pull off the plastic. You take off the plastic, you pull off the lid. Best feeling box I've ever opened. And then taking off the MacBook from the box, first thing I notice is I think the space gray is kind of bright, but feeling it, it's pretty heavy. It's not much noticeably heavier than the previous 16-inch, but it is a little heavier. And then other than that, you get your power brick, power adapter, information, Apple stickers, and then of course your USB-C to MagSafe cable this time, not USB to USB-C. So that's interesting. For me personally, I'm not going to use it. I like USB-C for charging because you can charge from either side, but if you want that magnetic charging, it is back. And of course, if you've watched any unboxing, you would know it comes with black Apple stickers, which basically signifies like that this is a Pro device. They only include this with their Pro devices. Anyway, feels sturdy, premium, nice in the hand, just like a solid slab of money. Taking off the plastic. That beautiful metallic space gray from aluminum looks nice. It's got a flat top now. Before it was kind of curved in the edges. And right on the bottom you have that MacBook logo engraved, which I think looks really nice. And then it's just a much thicker device. Everyone who's seen this so far has told me that it looks much thicker. It kind of looks like the old MacBooks, kind of retro vibe. I really like it. And of course you're getting those new ports. I'm a fan of this, and I love, once again, that MacBook Pro engraved, and I love the flat back, and I like the new touches to the design. Everything except for the notch, which we will get into in a minute. But opening the laptop. That keyboard now has like a black panel behind it. But other than that, it's more or less the same. Listing like the three main changes of this new MacBook. Number 1 is the design. Number 2 is the display. This has gotten a really big update. And number 3 is the processor. That's the biggest thing here. The fact that we're getting Apple Silicon, the Apple M1 Pro in this case, their own custom design processor. And in terms of the keyboard, by the way, it just feels the exact same as the previous 16-inch. It isn't a new mechanism, it's the same scissor switches. But it is interesting how they've kind of gone back from everything they've been doing since 2016. They brought back the ports, they brought back the scissor mechanism for the keyboard. It's like for that period of time between 2016 up until now, their main customer base for the MacBook Pros weren't actually Pro users. It was primarily targeted towards the average consumer, but also happened to work for Pro users. Now, what Apple seems to be doing is they've realized that, people aren't really happy with this. It's now primarily for the Pro users, the editors of all types who use the MacBook for heavy tasks. And then secondarily, it will also work for the average consumer who wants something powerful, but more reasonably, they have other options. This is now primarily for the Pro users for the first time in a long time. So, first impressions, let's go. I'm going to go through each change one by one and kind of dive into those. So firstly, looking at the design, do I like the design? I do. I like this retro look. It's a bit thicker. I'm cool with that. I'm definitely here for it, especially for the extra ports and the, extra features that this laptop gives, which we're going to get into in a minute. But I like the design. I like that black backboard behind the keyboard. I think that looks pretty stealthy. I would have loved all-round matte black color for the MacBook. I think it would have looked so nice. But overall, I rate the design. Flat back instead of curved around the edges, and it's just overall very sleek, very retro, and I'm a fan. And of course, it is thicker to allow for probably some new internal structures, but also an SD card slot and a HDMI port. These, for me, I'm not going to use this HDMI port. The most exciting part for me is the SD card slot. I no longer need to carry around an adapter, so that's really sweet. But we shouldn't really be praising them for bringing this back. It should have been there all along, but it is here now, and it just adds to the whole Pro machine and completes the experience. But one design element that I don't like is the notch, and that brings us onto the display. But talking about the notch, it only has one camera in it, so it's like unnecessarily large for just one 1080p selfie camera. I really reckon that they could have fit that camera in the top bezel. Now, it wouldn't have been good. Me personally, I would have been cool with compromising a worse camera so we don't have to have a notch. Then again, there are probably plenty of people who would disagree with me, so that's just my thoughts. But like I said, it is unnecessarily large, which leads me to think that Face ID will be introduced in the near future to the MacBook Pro lineup. The only reason they probably didn't do it now was just so they could save it as a later feature for the future. But Face ID on a MacBook makes a lot of sense. I don't like Face ID on the iPhone. I find it really annoying just because of how I find that it only works a certain percentage of the time, and masks just makes it more difficult, and overall it's just a horrible experience. But it makes a lot of sense on a MacBook. That's where it makes the most sense, because your face is right in front of it. I reckon that would be the most practical option. So I reckon you can expect that in the future, but no Face ID this time, just a big ugly notch with a 1080p FaceTime camera, which is significantly better, by the way. So that's another change there. But in terms of the design of the notch, I personally don't like it, but it does allow you to have that extra space up top instead of having a whole thicker bezel up top, so you can store the status bar up there, and then it doesn't actually interrupt any content when you're in full screen mode. It just acts as if it's a massive bezel. So it is beneficial for that extra space because you're just storing the status bar up there, so that's nice. If you want to hide it, then you can get a wallpaper that hides it. I actually have one. Sometimes I swap between the two, but there are plenty of workarounds, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be apps out there which will allow you to hide the notch. But anyway, talking about the display, this is one of the biggest changes, and I think a very important change because your display is the interaction between you and the device, so you want it to be very good, and depending on what you're using the display for, it can become more or less important. So if you do things like video editing, photo editing, stuff where the actual image that you are looking at on the screen is very important, then having a display like this is really useful. So this is a mini LED display. It's basically like an OLED for those of you who don't know. So each individual pixel has its own individual backlight, meaning you can switch off the backlight so you get true blacks instead of that artificial black where it's still emitting light, and like say the lights are off, you can still see light being emitted from where the pixels are meant to be black. Whereas in mini LED, you don't see any light being emitted in the black pixels, so overall it's deeper, truer blacks. Mini LED also just gives you better colors and overall a better looking display. Overall the display just looks nicer, and of course on top of that it goes to the edge. You're getting a higher screen to bezel aspect ratio, and you got curved corners at the top. Overall I think it looks pretty clean. Now for the most important and final part of my first impressions, the new chips. So in this model I have the M1 Pro. There's the M1 Max, which is a bit more powerful, and then there's the M1 Pro, which isn't as powerful, but is cheaper. Now the sweetest thing about this for me on this base model MacBook Pro is the fact that I can do everything. I can edit my 4K videos, I can record the voiceovers on top of the videos just like I'm doing now without the fans running in the background. This was a serious problem I had before. I used to have to do a little trick where I'd have to run Siri while I was doing the voiceovers because Siri actually allowed the fans to stop temporarily. But now I can just talk and the fan, you can't hear it. This is probably the most exciting feature for me. Now secondly, overall it's just faster, more powerful. Now this is only a first impressions video, so I'm not going to be able to get you some hands-on numbers of comparing the speed and export times of certain Final Cut projects between the old 16-inch and the new 16-inch, but I will be comparing the two in the review. Also, I'm going to be doing like a whole setup based on this MacBook Pro very, very soon, like a desk setup, an office setup kind of thing. So you definitely want to see that. I'm really excited to be doing that. Now also with these new internals, battery life in comparison to the Intel base model 16-inch is on completely different levels, like entirely different levels. The battery life on this machine is really, really good, especially if you're not editing and you're just kind of using it on the go just for kind of basic tasks. This thing will last you, but I can't give you a number. Like I said, you gotta wait for the review. Other than that, I said there were improvements in the FaceTime camera, but there was also improvements in the speaker, and the speakers in the previous 16-inch were already some of the best in the laptop, but these are even better. Not it's not going to be insanely better because they were already really good. They already set a really high standard, but it is better, and there is if you compare them one by one, you will notice a bit of a change. And I'll show you a demonstration of that in my review. But yeah, right off the bat, as someone who is primarily a video editor and, you know, does other things such as Word documents, emails, and kind of just the standard computer stuff, these are the things that have stuck out to me. These are the things that have made my first impressions. And it's priced the same as what the previous 16-inch base model was also priced at. So all of that, it's a sweet package, I think. It is an expensive device. And if you don't consider yourself a pro user, then you should stay away from it. It's just not worth paying this extra price. But like I said, finally this year, these MacBook Pros are finally accustomed to actual pro users. Those are primarily the target audience here and not the average user. So if you are a pro user and you appreciate macOS and the overall Mac experience, then this is a very, very nice, pleasurable Mac to use. But I really do have so much more to say in my review. I just haven't had enough time with it yet to be able to, you know, give you my full perspective on it. So stay tuned for that full review. Give this video a like and, you know, hit that subscribe button. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. Please, 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 please subscribe if you haven't already, and give this video a like and comment for the sake of the algorithm. Check out my Instagram at El-Naggar for a behind the scenes perspective and getting to see what I'm doing behind the scenes and, you know, what I'm up to, the new plans, the new desk setup, and everything that I'm doing there. And I would really appreciate it if you give me a follow on there. So yeah, anyway, I really hope you guys enjoy the video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Salam.